Hi, you guys. Michael DeBar here. You know, I was in this band, The Power Station, and...
The power of the power station!
And I wanted to tell you about this new podcast. Now, we all know that there's a tremendous amount of podcasts, but this guy, John Kay, he really knows what he's talking about. Get on, get on. Welcome to listeners, the new listeners, to John Kay's new podcast.
So although the two albums he had recently put out weren't really selling, the touring he was doing was finally starting to pay off. In 1985, Steppenwolf enjoyed a very successful co-headlining tour with the Guess Who. And shortly after that, Steppenwolf was booked to play Farm Aid 2 in 1986 and Farm Aid 3 in 1987.
I looked around and now the game's on our power. You don't know where we get by. Why don't you come with me, little girl, on a magic carpet ride?
In his book, John said that these were two of the best moments in his entire career. It was a gigantic stage for a great cause that he was sharing alongside of his peers. In a lot of ways, it was validation. The grind he had been on since 1980 was finally starting to pay off. Steppenwolf was back. He was getting proper venues. There was a little buzz about him going on in the music industry. He had a good reputation as a touring act. And he took all that momentum and he put out Steppenwolf's 12th album in 1987 called Rock and Roll Rebels. This is a great record. One of my favorites. In fact, I would say if their first album didn't have Born to Be Wild on it, this would be my favorite Steppenwolf record. It's got some great heavy guitars all the way through it. Sonically, it really reminds me of Boston's Third Stage album, which was put out just a year before this one. And thematically, most of the songs here are written about the struggles that he went through in the previous decade. And they're about perseverance and determination. It's very inspirational stuff, and I'll play probably the best song here. This is called Hold On, Never Give Up, Never Give In.
Hold on, never give up, never give in. Stay up and don't ever betray your dream.
Yeah, this is a really good song. And the title track on this record is also really good. Like I said, easily one of my favorite Steppenwolf albums. And frankly, if this had been on a proper US label and had gotten appropriate support, I think this could have been a big hit. I talked about this when my buddy Kyle came on the show for the beer tasting. So many 60s artists had a big resurgence in the late 80s. Grateful Dead, Tina Turner, John Fogerty, Roy Orbison, George Harrison, Aretha Franklin. Steppenwolf absolutely could have been one of those acts. Had Rock and Roll Rebels been promoted appropriately, had he been able to make a music video. It's so frustrating that that just didn't come to pass because he absolutely deserved it. Rock and Roll Rebels is one of the great lost gems of classic rock in the late 80s. And if you like 80s rock, this is a must-have. I don't know that it's going to be easy to find, but I'm sure it's streaming. It's on YouTube. I just really recommend this album, whether you're new to Steppenwolf or not. Because even if you're not new to Steppenwolf, there's a good chance you never heard this stuff because, again, it's so hard to find. You're never going to find this in a record shop, unfortunately. So a couple of years later, he would follow this up with Rise and Shine, which was released in 1990. He was inspired to write this record because in 1989, the Berlin Wall came down. And that wall represents a big factor in John's early life. If John's mother had not been able to smuggle him into West Germany, his life would have been entirely different. He never would have become a rock star. He could have been fully blind before he was even an adult. And God knows what a person with a disability's life would be in East Germany immediately after World War II. Like, it could have been absolutely dire. And all these years later, John had really never considered it very much, and he never really thought about it. So when he was watching the Berlin Wall come down on TV, this had a tremendous emotional effect on him. And he channeled those emotions into this Rise and Shine album, including a song on here called, appropriately, The Wall. Take a listen.
I saw the wooden crosses, saw the bloody stains, saw the gruesome pictures of all the ones that died in vain. Wall of countless victims, wall of bedless shame. And just one thing gone wrong, I might have joined that list of names.
So it should come as no surprise that this is one of the albums that John is most proud of, along with Steppenwolf's debut and Steppenwolf 7. I'm right there with him. This is a great record. This is one of my favorites as well, except it's alongside the debut in Rock and Roll Rebels. Top 3 album for sure, and the only unfortunate thing about it is that this was Steppenwolf's last album. I'm going to play one last clip from this Rise and Shine album. This is a song about the Vietnam War. It's called Rock and Roll War.
I made it home, but I'm still in pain. I'm not living or loving, for I'm still flying, living and dying in that rock and roll war.
I've been through an awful lot, decades of playing rock and roll music, and Joe Kay is a wonderful addition to the fabulous world and spectacular world of rock and roll.